Well, welcome everyone. Of course, I would like to introduce Chris Chong. Chris, I appreciate your time, yourself donating the time to be with us today. So everyone, I would like to introduce Chris Chong today. He's the founder of Butter Studios. So as this text mentions, with a diverse background that includes a career in the telecommunications industry and years of experience running his own photography and videography company, Chris Chong brings a unique perspective to the table. Having worked in both large corporations and the world of small businesses, he understands the challenges faced by entrepreneurs and the importance of managing quality control, enhancing client experiences, driving revenue growth, increasing efficiency, and ensuring long-term business sustainability. Most notably, Chris is passionate about helping small businesses and not-for-profit organizations achieve their goals through content creations and branding for their events. Now, let me present the one and only Chris Chong. Please welcome to Vision to Reality Foundation's storytelling sessions.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you to the V2RF team for having me today. Um, so where should I start? I guess just a little bit. I'll kind of continue on with Carlos's introduction. So thanks for the intro. And so just one slight correction. I actually did not found. I'm not the founder of Butter Studios. So it's actually my partner Gina who founded Butter Studios back in 2004. I guess technically earlier because she was doing photography earlier than that, but officially as a sole proprietorship in 2004. And I kind of came on board in 2007, convinced her to do it full time. And I started doing it part time. And then by 2009, we incorporated the business and kind of expanded on our services. So, starting from a photography company that offered wedding photography, family shoots, that kind of content. When I came on board, I always had this love for the corporate side of things. So I really wanted to expand on the opportunities there. So my role was to sort of oversee all the services that we could offer companies. And at first I was thinking like, okay, well, we can work with like the large companies, but then eventually I found that I really enjoyed working with small businesses also. So fast forward, um, I don't know, 10, 11 years. And then we came to the pandemic. And I was telling Rebecca earlier during the pandemic, like I had time to sit down and really think about where we really wanted to focus on. So now I pretty much run Butter Studios on my own, but we have a team of about 12 people that can assist with shooting video, editing, any type of photography. And we've kind of launched our partner services as well. So I guess you'll be the first to know on this call or this video that we're launching an aerial photography and videography branch of the business also, and that's through a partner. And some of the services we can offer includes mapping and basically just getting any sort of video and photo footage legally, might I add, because a lot of people have the small drones, but they're actually flying it illegally. But we did bring on board an advanced licensed pilot, and so that'll be launching pretty soon. And then other fun services like 360 video booths and photo booths as well. So photo booth used to be in-house, but I actually sold it to my photo booth manager, and now we just contract her to offer that service also. So that's sort of us in a nutshell. We don't shoot weddings anymore or family shoots, so we're just focused on corporate bookings, corporate events, and commercial, and working with small business branding as well. So that's sort of where we're at. And I'm supposed to be talking about taxes. So I was joking with the team also. I'm like, well, most of the questions can probably be answered by my accountant because they handle most of it. But there are definitely a lot of things I learned a lot along the way. So, I mean, I did all of our bookkeeping at the start, and moving from being a sole proprietorship, and you're basically starting a new business and starting all over again when you incorporate because it's a new business entity. So there were a lot of learnings there. I can definitely share quite a bit about how we look at our costs more closely now than we did before. And it's something that we have to maintain, or I've learned that we have to maintain and realize throughout the year, every year. So I'll have some tips on that. And but other than that, maybe I'll bounce back to Carlos to see where we should start on this topic.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for your introduction, Chris. And well, I've seen in your LinkedIn that you have been the one of the board of directors of the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce. Could you tell me more or less how did you involve with them? And also, I assume, and I've been seeing you before, that you're involved in different networking events. So, how important is networking for you?
For sure. It's funny. I had a mental note to talk about being a board director on the chamber, but I totally forgot. So thanks for mentioning that. So with the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce, um, we've been involved with them, I'd say since we've been a member since 2009, but really not involved until about 2011. And since then, I've grown to really love that organization. And as of this year, I sit on the board of directors for them to see how I can help small businesses through that channel. And I guess in a more indirect way as well. So when we talk about networking, networking is very important for any small business for sure. Um, and that's something that, it's a little bit intimidating at first, especially when you're naturally an introvert. And I know it's hard, like just go up to strangers and start talking, or when you see a group of people talking at a networking event, how do you insert yourself into that conversation? And there are definitely a lot of uh, better speakers out there that can give you tips on that. But as far as my personal learnings with that, I think at the very start, which the one mistake that a lot of people make, including myself, is that we go into that networking event and we just want to talk about our business and the services that we offer. And if it's not my business, if I'm there on behalf of a different company, like we just want to talk about who we can connect with and try to create that client vendor or business relationship right away. And I feel like that's the biggest mistake because a lot of people are already doing that. And whoever you're talking to is probably going to meet a whole bunch of other people that day that are approaching in that same way. And you might not get that interest of the person that you're talking to if you jump to that right away. So I didn't really have much success in my first couple of years, really promoting the business at networking events. Um, until I realized like I started making some friends, whether it's with the organization that's hosting the event or just other people that are there. And it became more of like a friendly relationship. And we're not talking business. We're just talking about anything really. We're talking about life. We're talking about, you know, what's happening that day for each of us. And just having that genuine conversation. And then I found that later on, it could be a month later or it could be 2 years later. But the person that I talked to at that event, they go, "Oh, I need a photographer. I need a videographer for an upcoming event or for my business." Oh, I remember that guy Chris that I talked to, and that's when they contact me for my services. But I mean, what's more important is actually, I gained like a genuine connection. It really became about not about selling my service. It's just that I created that connection, and it's with a great person, right? The other side of it was that I kind of cheated, right? In a way, it was a lot easier to sponsor an event that the chamber was hosting because as a sponsor, I'm there, I get the recognition already, and I can just talk to anybody. When I'm photographing the event, I'm literally talking to everybody that's there, and I find at least half the people will strike up a conversation with me. So that made it a lot easier also. But then became like sponsoring a lot of fun events, and we just continue to do so. And I mean, to this day, we sponsor all of their major events. Yeah.
That's good to know. And if we rewind a bit to your beginnings,
Hmm.
uh, what brought you into photography, and what was your decision making to go all in with that field? Yeah, knowing that you already mentioned that you're coming from a big corporation, right?
Hmm. So that part of it starts quite early on. Even when I was in high school, I kind of already knew that I would run my own business one day. The question was, what business would it be? And then one of my electives in grade 11 and 12 was film photography. So I took that just to try it out, and I just found that I really enjoyed it. But when you leave high school, you kind of don't know. For me, anyways, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just jumped into business administration at Cap College at the time, now Capilano University, and just took whatever courses I could, and then decided to kind of try the corporate world. And I started work at TELUS, which led me to Bell when they moved out west and expanded out west. And there were a lot of opportunities there for me to get into management and eventually become a director there. Um, and also did some project management there also. But during that entire journey through my corporate career, I still knew that the end goal was that I was going to run my own business. Right. And then when I met my partner at the time, she had already started Butter Studios. So I kind of had the luxury of being able to play with her equipment and see how much I really wanted to jump into it. And then um, the next question was, well, how do I step over now? How do I guarantee that I will make enough money to earn a living if I leave this, great job that I already had, but it was, I felt like I was working 12 to 14 hours a day for someone else. So I really want to, if I was going to be working those hours, I wanted to do it for myself. So I just saved up enough money to last for, I think my goal was 3 to 6 months. So if I had zero work, I could still survive for 3 to 6 months and figure something out. And then I just made the jump.
Nice. That's good to know. And just of curiosity, what did being in like a big corporation taught you, or what things that being a big corporation taught you uh, when you changed into being an entrepreneur?
It taught me so much. I I learned about what the shareholders really want, which at the end of the day is revenue, right? It kind of starts there and then works backwards into operations and how operations will achieve that. So from a mindset, I learned a lot about uh, proper operations from an employee as well as from a management perspective. And I always felt like with everything in this world, you always try to find that balance because you can't please everybody. So that was an important lesson for me. It's like you can't please everybody, but how do you make the best decisions that will please the most people? I also had different projects that taught me a lot about managing productivity and then quality and then the revenue side of things. And I think by the time I left, I was running a 500 employee call center. So I had a lot of people reporting to me. So I learned a lot about coaching, management, creating goals, SMART goals. I think it's one of those acronyms that I still use today. How do you create specific, manageable, attainable, what was the R for again? I know the T is for timely, but R, I like to call it relevant. I think that's it. So relevant to what's the big goal that you want to achieve. Um, yeah. So, I think working with people in general, for me, because I really want to focus on corporate clients, just having that corporate background really helped me because I had a chance to work with people in all different departments, whether they're in marketing, advertising, sales, or customer service. And
Nice.
um, yeah, sorry. The last big thing is customer service, because if you can't deliver that, then quite frankly, I don't think you'll be a business that will last if you don't have client focus on your mind all the time.
And how do you keep that flowing? Like that customer service perspective. And do you direct that mindset into quality, into service, into face-to-face like kind of management? How do you handle it?
I think overall, you always just have to put yourself in the client shoes. Like, what would you expect from your own business, right? If you were to walk into your own business and book your services or buy your product, and I think it's a setting the right expectations, and communication is key. Just like in any relationship, communication is key. So right from the get go, knowing what understanding what your client wants, and then letting them know what you can deliver, and setting those key expectations right away. And then, of course, quality, like delivering what you say you're going to deliver every time. And if you can't, I think the real test of customer service is things can happen that may be out of your control. You know, I mean, in my instance, hasn't happened to me, luckily, but with other studios that are similar to ours, I've heard of horror stories like a memory card failing and all the photos are lost from that day, or a camera breaking down, or dropping your camera into the river or something, and not being able to finish off the day. So things can happen that are out of your control, but it's how do you handle it in those situations that really defines the level of customer service you can deliver. And if your mindset is that you're always caring about the client and thinking from their perspective and how they would like to see it handled, then I think you would be okay.
Perfect. And you mentioned the journey of how did you step into this new field. And once you started, you have returning to the taxation side of the business. How did you start it? How did you connect with an accountant? And at the beginning, I think you mentioned before when we were talking with Rebecca that you managed your accounting yourself at the beginning as well.
Mhm.
So when did you start to trust in your accountant more? And also, you mentioned one important aspect that was reducing costs, that you had certain reducing like cost reduction strategies.
Mhm.
How did you manage that side?
So we were lucky. We were introduced to our accountant by my financial planner. So he already had good references to start, and I don't know how else to put it, but I mean, he knew what he was doing. If anything, I probably annoy him most of the time with questions, because I always ask him like, "Hey, can I expense this? Can I expense that?" And his answer is always the same, which is frustrating, but it's also true. His answer is always, "Well, if it is something that you need to run your business, then you can expense it." I'm like, "Well, can I just justify everything that I needed to run my business?" If I'm happy, does it count? Anyways, so I was lucky to have him help me with like figuring out filing for GST, PST, and then when we were sole proprietor, like our personal income taxes, and moving into becoming a corporation, in the corporate taxes and that sort of thing. I found that you almost need a really good financial planner or planning team that can complement everything that the accountant helps you with, right? And a planner that's familiar with working with small, medium businesses, because they're the ones that can give you advice and tips on um, the tax credits that you can qualify for, um, and what's more beneficial, taking out shareholder dividends every year versus putting yourself on payroll and paying EI and CPP, right? Which would be taxed on a higher rate. So for a while there, we were only taking out dividends every year. And I think it's better to ask an accountant. So I don't want to quote the exact amount, but I believe uh, it's about 55,000 that you can take out of a corporation every year as dividends, where you won't be taxed personally for it. So again, confirm that with your accountant because that number always changes every year also. But even if you don't take out that amount, you can still put it on a T5 every year, so that at a later date, like let's say your business booms 5 years from now, and you have, I don't know, $1 million in the bank, but you want to take out 500,000 without being taxed for it. So all those years where you didn't take out that full amount, but you still had it on your income taxes, so it's kind of like a deferred withdrawal. You can do so later on when you have the money and not be taxed on your personal income taxes for it. Other things, I mean, there's some more minor things like whether you should charge PST, when do you charge PST or not. For example, like for us, we used to have services and products. So products being like prints or albums that we would create for our clients. But then the service side is that we're just there. We show up, we photograph or we film whatever it is we need to film. So if you based on the definitions of when you should charge GST and PST, you should charge GST on everything. So we knew that. But then when it came to like creating a wedding package where it includes 10 hours of service plus X amount of albums, it's like, well, can we charge PST only on the albums, or do we need to charge on the whole amount? Um, but that's something that we needed help on figuring. And at the end of the day, it was considered a package. So yeah, we actually had to charge PST on everything. Right. And I don't know the exact answer for like for your cell phone service, for example, but have you noticed on your cell phone bill that you're charged PST? But technically, you're just getting a service, right? But no, if your phone that you purchased, you purchased it at a subsidized price, then it's considered as part of the entire package, right? So I think that's one reason why you charge PST on your cell phone bill every month. So it's just figuring out little things like that. Um, yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling a bit.
No, yeah, and you were mentioning about I wanted you to mention some strategies regarding reduction of costs.
Hmm. So reduction of costs. I think I think many small businesses make this mistake, but one mistake that we made was that when the going was good, we spend a lot of money, right? So when we had a great year or a great summer, I found myself buying new lights, new cameras, new audio equipment, new computer, and a lot of it is controlling your spending and create yourself a monthly budget. All right. So I like to work backwards and create my yearly budget and go, okay, I want to make this much, I want to gross this much revenue this year, and then work backwards from that. So from that, we need to take out rent, we need to take out our internet costs, our phone costs, and all of our operational expenses, as well as the budget a little bit of money for unexpected expenses also. Something like I think 2 years ago, our HVAC system went down. So all of a sudden, that was another $2,000 that we needed to spend, right? That we didn't expect. So just budgeting for those emergencies as well as your regular expenses, and then out of that, create a budget for upgrading equipment or maintenance of your whatever it is you need to sell your product or service. So I think step one is creating a budget and staying within that budget. And I'll leave it up to you, but if you don't use up that budget one month, well, then maybe you can carry it over to the next month, right? Maybe that more expensive item that you needed can be purchased then. And then if you have money left over, if you're lucky enough to have money left over, just figuring out what to do with that money as well. So we sold our studio space last year, reluctantly, but the rest of our strata neighbors, they wanted to sell, so we had to sell as an assembly. So long story short, we did have a bit of money left over, but we kept it within the corporation, but invested it into some mutual funds and GICs through the business, so that money continues to grow as well. So keep in mind, you're going to be taxed on those earnings, but at least it's not just sitting around or spent unnecessarily. And that's one way that we can kind of hold on to that money also until we sort of build up that shareholder dividend credit later on. And then if we want to, we can withdraw it at that time. I think the third part about managing your costs is to not just accept your current costs as the be all end all, right? So having worked in the cell phone industry, that I already knew, like, you don't have to renew on your current plan and pay whatever it is at the end of your contract every year. Let's put it this way. If you have anything that's on a contract, whether it's internet service, cell phone service, these days with apps and software, we're paying subscription fees all the time, right? There seems to be more and more. If you get any sort of cloud service, you're paying every month for that service. So know that at the end of your contract for any of these services, it can be negotiated, or you shop a different competitor. So something that, when the pandemic hit, we had 0 events. So I was literally sitting around. So I had time to look at all of our costs, and that's what I did. I had time. So I called every single company and go, hey, I feel like I'm paying too much for my cell phone bill, right? Hey, I feel like I'm paying too much for my internet, all right? Even with some of the services that we require for our businesses for editing and delivering photos to clients. I went on their customer service online chat. I just said, hey, the pandemic just hit and all businesses in our line of work has been hit. Are you guys helping out in any shape or form, like, that I should know about? And some of it was small, but it still helped. Like, they gave me 3 months free service. But that was one way that we kind of weathered through the storm, right? But what that time taught me was that it's something that I can talk about with these suppliers or with these vendors all the time, right? And if you're able to save $300 on this one service, right? And for you out there, I don't know how much you charge per hour, but like, let's say you expect to make $50, $60 an hour doing what you do. But if you can save $300 for the year by calling them and talking to them for about half an hour, then I think it's worth doing. Another big killer is credit card merchant services, right? There are so many providers out there and so many options to choose from. And you really have to dig in and talk to them about what is the actual rate that you're paying, because they can tell you, like, well, we only charge 2% for every Visa and MasterCard charge that you put through. But a lot of times, that's not the full information that you need. It's 2% on a regular card, but you may be charged 3 or 4% if that person's card, they collect points or they collect any sort of rewards, or if it's considered a special type of card. So in reality, you're actually paying a lot more than you thought. Whereas some providers will just give you the upfront, this is the flat rate. Doesn't matter if it's like a special Visa or MasterCard. And depending on the volume that you do, like for us, just changing credit card services 1 year, it saved us about, I think it was like $7,000 or $8,000 per year. So all that, I always put it in my calendar about a week before the contract ends, with any that I know that I can negotiate or go to a competitor. So, give it a try.
Well, that's a nice tip for everyone, I think. So I appreciate that, Chris. I think Chris gave a lot of tips personally and professionally. So we should all renegotiate all our contracts every year. Thank you very
Exactly.
much, Chris. And Chris, you also mentioned that you basically use networking to meet new people and new clients. Nowadays, do you still look for more clients? How do you reach them? Do you still use, maybe do you do ads or social media ads or whatever?
I actually don't spend a cent on ads anymore. So we used to do print ads when we used to service weddings. So we would advertise in like wedding magazines and directories. And for a while there, I would spend quite a bit on like Instagram and Facebook ads, but we've kind of stopped that for a while also. I'm always looking for new clients, but I like it when it happens organically. So I know it's not the reality for a lot of industries and businesses out there. Um, we kind of have that luxury because what we offer as a service generates a lot of content for us to post, right? So we can post on Instagram and uh, I guess TikTok a little bit more now too. But yeah, we actually don't spend a lot of advertising. A lot of it is through word of mouth now, or our clients find us on Google. But I'd say primarily word of mouth, and just through clients that we've collaborated with in the past, and they're happy with us. One thing though that I think that we need to focus on with Butter Studios is actually asking our clients for more testimonials and more Google reviews. Um, yeah, and it's an interesting that's happened recently as well, right? With social media removing all of news articles out of well, Google and Meta and Facebook in particular. But you know what was a form of advertising, like if there was an article on your business that people would see in their feeds or on Google, now is gone also. So I think we also have to um, really rethink how we want to advertise going forward, and seeing what works best for your type of business. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it falls on content creation and you know being able and posting on social. I think is key. Um, I feel like I still network, but I do it more for fun.
Good to know. Well, I think we reached the storytelling session time frame, so we
Ready?
can pass to
But
the
like,
Q and A. But we can pass to the Q and A, even though I have asked some questions. I have more. So if anyone doesn't have any questions, I can have more questions for Chris. But does anyone have any questions at the moment?
You mentioned this in like the very beginning of your presentation, but do you think people were apprehensive about the idea of using drones because of the historical invasion of privacy?
I think it's very obvious when it's a clear invasion of privacy. Like the drone would actually be right in front of the condo unit, or directly, like really close to someone's home or above their home. Um, but I think there's a clear difference between someone doing that and versus someone actually using it for work. Because generally it's pretty like wide angles on the cameras on the drones. So when it's 400 feet, 300 feet in the air, it's not going to be able to see anyone's face, or anything like that. You know what I mean? You're seeing more of the landscape or the view that we're trying to get. Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. But I think like it's just that misconception, right? Like a lot of people think of drones and they're like, wow, Big Brother's watching.
But
So
no.
yeah, like of course you're doing it legally. But you have a question in the chat, and it's how much normally does CPA charge for auditing a company?
For auditing a company.
Yes.
um Now, I'm not sure about auditing per se. I just don't know if you're referring to maybe bookkeeping or.
Person who asked the question, you can also unmute. to clarify your question. So they said, does the company require auditing for the account for CRA?
I think it's only if CRA is requesting the audit, but otherwise, as far as I know, once you've started your business and you're paying your taxes and not trying to you cheat in any way, then you won't be audited. As far as like regular accounting expenses goes, I pay roughly about $200 a month for bookkeeping, and then there'll be additional fees for filing GST, PST, as well as our year-end corporate taxes. And the only other time that I have to pay any additional would be if I require any sort of special reporting. For example, as a business owner, like we sometimes have challenges proving our income when we're applying for things like credit, like applying for a mortgage, for example. A lot of times they don't look at dividend income as regular income. So that's something to consider as well if you're not putting yourself on a regular payroll. Now, we applied for a grant, and I guess this would be similar to an auditing cost, but we applied for a grant back in 2020, like during the pandemic when the government was offering some small business grants. And part of the agreement and the application process was for them to have an assigned accountant slash auditor to work with you on your application and to look at your numbers. Now, that was paid for by the federal government at the time, and the budget for that was around $2,400. So it wasn't like an intense audit. It was more looking at our financial statements, but they didn't go in depth in terms of like looking at every single receipt or anything like that. So hopefully that helps with your question.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, okay. They said that it helped with the question.
Perfect.
There's no other questions from the chat, but anyone else who has questions can also unmute. But while we're maybe waiting for a few more questions to come in, I think, Carlos, you can ask a few of the remainder questions that you have, and then we can wrap up the session.
Sure. Chris, what would you suggest would be different ways that people can have access to networking?
There are a lot of business groups, like even when you go on Facebook, there are a lot of B2B, like networking business groups. Sometimes you have to really go through it and see which ones are the good ones. So it's almost like join 10 in your local area, just search your city name and just type in like networking and connecting with other businesses. And you kind of have to monitor it for the first week or so and see which one has the most activity and stuff. So online, that's one option. If it's in person, then I feel like the easiest for us in Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam was the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce, just because you have so many events. And I know some of the other chambers have a lot of events also. With Burnaby and Vancouver, you have the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade and the Burnaby Board of Trade. I'm not going to knock any of them, but I mean, I've shown up to a few different ones. There are some where if you're looking for a lawyer, accountant, or IT person, it's great. But if you're looking to talk to any other types of like small businesses, sometimes you're just not going to find them at certain ones. But yeah, I would start with your local Chamber of Commerce or Board of Trade, and you will meet a lot of people there. Some will be involved in other organizations as well, as just like how I found out about Vision to Reality, right? Through Winnie. And I met her at a chamber event, and she told me about this foundation is starting. It sounded like a great idea back then, and obviously it was, because now it's grown to over 500 members, which is awesome. And the other thing is you can also volunteer or sponsor not-for-profit events. I feel like that's an easy way to meet other people in your community, whether they're business owners or they just work in your community. Volunteer at the food bank, right? They have events all the time. So you're helping people and you're also meeting people.
Thanks for sharing. And Chris, related, well, we know that nowadays AI is affecting everything. And how do you see AI affecting the photography field in this sense?
I think the biggest field that it would impact is probably on the commercial side, because why wouldn't a company want to just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, create me a picture of someone drinking a cup of coffee in front of the Golden Gate Bridge, right? And it automatically creates it for you and gives you options as well. So you can either do that or you can do it the traditional way and hire someone to organize the shoot, find a location and pay for it as well, hire models, hire a production team, hire a makeup artist, right? So you don't have to do all that anymore. That said, AI will give you right now, AI will give you a good general finished product based on what you want, but it's not exactly what a company may want. So there, I feel like there's still value in hiring a team to do it, especially when it's like a local product, right? So let's say, I want two people chatting, happy, pretending they're at a networking event, but I want them to be wearing V2RF t-shirts. You know what I mean? So right now, eventually it will be, but right now AI doesn't can't quite achieve that for you, right? So you actually have to do the shoot in person. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, for events, I don't think there's really any impact in that sense, because we're there to capture the event as it happens, right? So AI is not going to create actual events. It's all proposed or the idea of that event.
Yeah, basically you're working with AI. So you're allying with AI in this sense.
Exactly.
Cool. And then, well, I have two last questions. The
Speaking of
first
which,
one, oh yeah,
you
go
asked
for
me
it.
to submit a biography. I actually had ChatGPT do it for me.
Good to know.
I said,
Yeah, of course.
all I inputted was like create a bio, a quick bio, 140, was it 140 words or something of Chris Chong of Butter Studios, just to see what it would come up with. It was actually quite accurate. It had some old information in there that I took out, but otherwise it was pretty accurate.
Good to know. Yes, it's a good way to more or less grab some sources of creativity from somewhere else.
Hmm.
Good to know. Chris, first question is, what are the pros and cons you feel of being your own boss?
Cons. I don't really see any cons if you're 100% invested into it, then I really don't see any cons. I only see pros. You're really, for me, I love the control of my own schedule, of the flexibility of it. I can hang out with my kids. I can block off dates, to take my kids somewhere. I can schedule shoots, outside of events, right? I can schedule shoots, or I can schedule shoots around like my vacation schedule, for example. But if there was a con, if any, it's what you get out is what you put in, right? And sometimes being a small business owner can be hard when you see taxes coming up. Uh, we sold our studio last year, but we're renting from the new owner. But the rent agreement is a triple net type of agreement. So we had to pay for the property tax this year, which was $8,000, right? 40% higher than the previous year. So things like that, expenses coming up with everything. Like we all know it, expenses are coming up. So that means you need to be able to earn more as well in order to keep up. So, yeah, you're working on your business all the time. I feel like I have a need to respond to a client, even if it's 11 o'clock at night, right? If I'm near my computer or near my phone and it's just a quick answer, I will do it. Because, again, I always think of it in the client's shoes. And if it's like an initial inquiry, chances are they might have, contacted 3 other companies as well. I want to be the first to respond because I want them to know that, you know what, I'm on top of it. I'm on top of my business and I'm there for my client. So, I want to be the first in, because if I'm not, I know if I respond the next day or 2 days later, they might already say like, well, this other company already responded and we booked with them. So too bad, so sad. I don't know. There's just so many pros. I think I mentioned before that I was working for someone else 12 to 14 hours a day, but I probably do the same, if not more, for my own business. But I enjoy it, right? I made my hobby my business, and I'll make it work no matter what.
Good to know. And finally, my last question is, how do you keep your creativity flowing, and how do you overcome the creative blocks?
I feel like I'm inspired by my clients. I've learned from other awesome, like amazing photographers, and I remember one of them telling me that he gets inspired by movies, right? So he watches a ton of movies, and then when he sees like a certain look, that inspires him to kind of go into a project that has that look, or where he can create that look. For me, it's really about the clients and hearing the client's story. And that's a reason why we've moved away from weddings and family shoots, because I'm very interested in the story of a business, whether you're small, medium, or big. I love hearing the successes, and I'm empathize with the struggles as well with a small business, and I love hearing that person's story, how they created the business, how they came up with the idea, how they made it work, and so yeah, the short answer is that I'm always inspired by the people that I meet through my work.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. It's been an insightful conversation. We appreciate, on behalf of Vision Reality Foundation, for this storytelling session.